All right, there we go. Well, cheers. Only proper way to start. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.
The only proper way to start here in Waukesha, Wisconsin, is to describe the setting of today's conversation, because you and I were chatting as manufacturing happy hour has evolved. The spirit is always as if we're having a drink with one another, but we don't always get to have a beer like we are today. So where are we hanging out? Describe the place.
This is Raised Grain Brewery in Waukesha. I would say one of my faves, but I can't say I frequent a lot of microbrews or craft breweries.
Okay.
But it is an awesome place. I guess, I live 20 minutes from here, so this would be right at the top of my list if I was going to get out and grab a beer.
Yeah, well, fortunately, they have to-go packs as well, so you can always bring the goodness home. And it has been freezing here in Wisconsin these past few days, so you and I are both drinking dark beers. You've got the porter. I'm doing the Guitar City black lager, which, if folks aren't familiar with Waukesha, we should probably share a little bit of history. There's a very renowned individual that's from this area, correct?
Yeah, Les Paul.
Yep. And am I making it up? Isn't Les Paul guitar legend, but isn't Gene Wilder from here as well?
That I don't know, actually.
I think he might be. He's somewhere from the Wisconsin area out here. I'm not sure if this is the exact one, but nevertheless, some good history down here in Waukesha.
A lot of awesome people from Wisconsin, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the spirit of manufacturing happy hour a little bit. How do you describe what Faith Technologies, or more broadly, FTI does, is if you're having a drink with someone?
Yeah, so FTI is a company that's been around for just over half a century now. Mm-hmm. I would say for the first 30 years or so, they were focused primarily on electrical contracting. Mm-hmm. And for the last 2 decades now, they've been organically growing, and then also through acquisitions trying to broaden the footprint of what value they can bring to their customers and clients. Mm-hmm. So things like renewable energies, that's been a growing trend for 15 to 20 years now or so, and I think they recognized that early and wanted to put a foot in that door to start the momentum. Industrial automation is another good example of that. That's probably about 20 years old now at the company. And then also what we call industrialized construction. So being a construction company, what we realize is there's a lot of things that take place on a construction site that can be done better if done offsite. So we offsite a lot of that work now and then bring a finished product to the site. So that's another one of those areas, and I think we can talk more about each one of those as we get further into the conversation. But, been around for 50 years, and anything that has anything to do with electric power or low voltage communications or renewable energies or energy storage for that matter, anything having to do with electricity, that's kind of what we get into.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk around energy, or the in vogue term in the manufacturing space, sustainability, as we get into this conversation. I want to ask a little bit about your career, though, because you've been with Faith FTI for a while now, and you mentioned that there are different segments to this business. I'm curious about the evolution of your role, because you were a solutions architect, now you're the director of automation, and you dabble in all these different groups. Can you tell us a little bit about your own career evolution in that regard?
Sure. Only during my time at FTI, or kind of leading up to it, or what are you thinking?
What do you think? Give us a little bit about the pre-FTI background, because I think that's relevant, because you and I actually have some common career background as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, a lot of great people from Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. But I started my career actually just after school. I studied mechanical engineering, so I'm a little bit of a misfit when it comes to this electrical world. Mm-hmm. Studied mechanical engineering, started my career with Rockwell Automation, which is also a Milwaukee-based company.
Yep.
That was 2006. I was with Rockwell about 15 years up until 2021 when I came to FTI. So held a variety of different roles at Rockwell. A lot of my focus was electric motor control applications, and that's still my passion today. My time here at FTI, started as a solution architect. So the focus there is really finding and developing relationships with new customers and clients, call it business development. And then, certain levels of account management as we, stay close to those customers and continue to deliver meaningful solutions to them. So that was, the first couple of years of my career with FTI, and now just over the last 12 months or so, my focus is very much the same in regards to, customer relationship management, business development, but I have a small team that reports to me, and that's their focus as well. So that's like one pillar of our automation group. Then we've got a project management team, and we've got the engineering execution team that actually does the work. So the promises that we make, the project management and project execution team look to fulfill those promises. But we all work together in unison, throughout the process, throughout the sales cycle, to make sure that we're setting the right expectations and able to deliver on what we talk about. So
you and I have a bit of overlap in our background. I was 4 years behind you starting at Rockwell in the sales world. If you were 06, I was getting there around 2010. And it's good to hear you still have a role where you can make some promises to the clients and, have the project management team and execution team have to deliver on those as well. So I like to think I never overpromised too much when I was a salesperson. So I still try to temper that to these days.
Definitely, yep.
So I've got a question. We were talking about the range of projects you do from, if I saw it right, like modular e-houses and things that you can build for a construction site off-site, and you bring them, basically prefab buildings. That's one of the elements. There's a large energy element to your business. So when companies bring in FTI, because you have this range of capabilities, I notice energy is a sweet spot for you. Are they bringing you in for energy and then saying, oh, you can do prefab buildings, you can do automation? I'm just curious what that engagement looks like, just kind of for my own knowledge.
I think a lot of it actually starts with the reputation that we have as an electrical contractor. And I'll say that maybe specifically to kind of the Midwest region, right? So it's a recognizable name because it's been around for 50 years or so. So a lot of the interactions that we have start with, they already know who we are. We can, install and, do the entire project itself. So from concept development through engineering, installation, now we can add these pieces of automation into the scope as well. So a manufacturer, for example, building a new plant, they're going to want to work with a design firm, and that design firm may have, civil and structural engineering disciplines. We're not going to be able to offer some of that, but for the electrical scope, certainly. And then to carry that design all the way through a manufacturing cycle that, again, if we can internalize that and shorten the time that the team has to spend on site, that's a pretty big value add. So not only is it shortening the time, but if we're producing something in our facility that we bring to site, typically the quality is going to be a little bit better. And then safety is a huge part of our culture.
Yeah.
So the less time spent on site working in the elements in a construction environment, the better in terms of personnel safety, both for our team as well as the other trades that are building out that facility.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. But then again, it's like once the product is installed, the system is installed, now we can add to that picture automation solutions, come in and commission the system, help them get their manufacturing line up and running, and then future long-term support is something else that we offer. So
it's interesting because when I look at your website, when I was getting familiar with FTI, it seems like energy is front and center right now. But you were just highlighting that your reputation as an electrical contractor is one of the things that really, if I'm hearing this right, helped you evolve into these areas. Have you started to see that reputation, to use the word I just said, evolve over time, where now folks are like, hey, this is the group that can help us with a sustainability project, a stored energy project, for example?
Yeah, good point. Maybe I kind of sidestepped your question there, Chris.
No, that's okay. That's what a conversation over beer is for.
Yeah. Certainly a conscious effort for us to articulate that message to our customers and clients and other partners for that matter. Energy is one of those resources that takes, it's part of everything that we do as a as a human race, really, right? So you're not going to produce a product unless you're putting energy into it. Our focus of energy is really the electrical power itself. So we've created solutions and we've made acquisitions over the years that put us into a unique position to provide some of those, for example, renewable energy solutions. But again, you look at our team, it's like we've got electrical engineers, we've got electrical contractor, field team members, we've got automation group members. So that's kind of electrical at its base or at its core. It all kind of evolves, I would say, around electric power, electricity in general. And energy is core to that, right? So it's like, how do we allow our customers to realize any efficiency that they can? Yeah. And if it's battery storage and they can kind of time shift the utilization of power, that might be one solution. If it's adding renewable energy resources to their facility so that they can advertise as a more sustainable company, we want to help them with that. So energy is, I would say, kind of the billboard, if you will. But I think there's a lot more to it than just that, right?
Well, you got me thinking about like the prefab building element of your business as well, because I started my career in Houston, Texas, where electrical e-houses are a big part of the market down there. You're just providing power that gets shipped out to oil platforms. These e-houses travel all over the world as well. But I never thought of it from the standpoint of, especially here in Wisconsin, where, as we said, it's freezing cold right now, where you can do these projects in more of a safe environment where you can have more focus on quality without having to be outside the entire time putting these things together. Are you seeing more of a trend in the manufacturing space to do more of these prefabricated buildings?
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's somewhat market specific for us, which is related to data center and the growth within that market space.
Sure,
we caught the wave at the right time, and we're riding that wave, and that's producing a serious amount of growth for our company at the moment, providing electric power distribution systems in a prefabricated way to those data centers. But I was going to say, I've been down to Houston when I was working for Rockwell as a field service engineer, and it's kind of the opposite. It's freezing cold up here right now. I was in Houston in late June, and I just remember, and I was in a facility working on, restructuring MCCs and switchgear basically for oil industry. And again, it's the opposite. It was 110 degrees, and it rained every day at noon on the spot, and then got way more humid in the afternoon. It was like, I don't know what's worse, working in that or working in the cold. I mean, neither are pleasant. So if we can do that in a controlled environment, which is what we're doing, I think that's the best end result. So yeah, over the last 5 years or so, we've built out 3 production facilities now, totaling about 1.2 million square feet. So those are dedicated to modular electric power distribution systems. And again, maybe not specific to data center, but that's a big part of it. So,
well, I've got some questions about data centers and some other very interesting applications I came across. But let's double down on energy for a little bit first, because that is one of the areas that has stood out. And there you have some well-publicized case studies in this area. But when we're talking energy, let's break it down for the folks as if we're having beers right now. Like when we talk energy, you mentioned battery storage, right? We're going to talk about biodigesters as well. What other areas fall under the energy category?
Petroleum, right?
Okay.
That's an energy resource. Any renewable energy, of course, nuclear. We're not necessarily in all of these spaces that I'm talking about, but I think your question is just general, like what falls within energy. So
yeah, and I'd be curious with the ones that you're most focused on as well.
Yeah. So renewable energy resources, and I would say in general just electric power distribution. Those are kind of the 2 areas that we're doing work in or focused on at this point in time. But the other thing is, energy and how it's used, right? So can we help a manufacturing customer through the utilization of automation, for example, optimize their production system and reduce their energy? So we have what we call Pathway to Smarter Energy, and it's really a stepwise approach to helping a customer look towards becoming energy independent. So step one is let's assess where you guys at. Let's benchmark it. And step two is maybe we can propose a few things that help them optimize or help them conserve energy.
Yeah.
Step three is how can you leverage or offset your energy with renewable energy resources? And then ultimately, step four is how can you become energy independent with, full resilience of that energy throughout your production facility or your office environment or whatever it might need to be.
Okay, so there's a lot there. So we were just talking about energy independence, which that feels like a subset of renewables. You were also talking about electrical power distribution, and then just the impacts that automating and modernizing have on sustainability and energy efficiency. Let's double down on renewables a little bit, because you did a biodigester in Middleton, Wisconsin. This is the project I want to talk about first for a couple reasons. One, I've seen a lot about this project. Two, I actually worked on an anaerobic digester when I was in college. We won't focus on that one right now, but give us a bit of background on biodigesters. As if you're having a drink with someone, you're basically taking cow manure and you're turning it into renewable natural gas, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So we have a stream of feedstock coming in, feedstock being cow manure. And maybe
That's a really nice way to describe cow manure, by the way.
Yeah. Sometimes it's appropriate to use that phrase instead of just cow poop. So, but let me back up one sec. So that particular facility, FTI looked at that and said, this is an asset that we would like to acquire. So we own and operate that particular facility.
Very cool.
And in its state that we acquired it in, it was a biodigester using cow manure. The off gas was then used and sent through an engine, basically burn the gas to turn a generator to produce electric power. So that's a form of renewable energy. Instead, that's a great solution, right?
Yeah, but you kind of took it to the next level, right?
And for good reason. Money makes the world go round. So at the time that we took that project on and kind of converted it to what it is today, natural gas prices were different, carbon credits were different, etc. And injecting renewable natural gas into the national pipeline made a lot of sense financially. So if we could do that, we wanted to. So we looked at that facility and we said that might be the place where we can do that. So instead of combusting that fuel and turning a generator to produce electric power, we converted the site to a re-injection site. Technically, it's offloaded onto a truck and then it's brought to a re-injection site.
Sure.
But the basics are the feedstock comes in, again, cow manure, that comes in, goes into our digester tanks. The biology does its magic, if you will, produces off gases, fills up a balloon. We suck the gas out of that balloon. We scrub that gas, clean it, remove the constituents that aren't needed, that don't add value to a renewable natural gas, or could be corrosive to the pipeline, and then compress it and deliver it to a vehicle that transfers it over to the pipeline injection site. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But, there was a pretty hefty investment that went into that, both from an electrical installation, I'll say electrical design, and kind of an EPC engagement where we're looking at skid providers, additional partners to add value, and then the overall installation of the project, the automation that went in to make it all happen. And then long term, we continue to support that. So I guess it kind of went from a team of people making sure that plant ran every day to it falls on the shoulders of one individual, but that individual has a team of automation engineers behind him if he ever needs to make that phone call. His job is different now today. He doesn't have to be on site every day. He can not sit on his couch because he's paid to not sit on his couch, but can look at his phone and understand what is the performance of the plant now, how much am I producing. The other thing is we put in a large solar array at that site with one of our microgrid inverters. So from a electric power consumption standpoint, we're still using utility power as needed or when needed when the clouds are overhead, for example. But when we have a nice sunny day, we can run completely off grid. So,
All right.
yeah.
That is so okay, so the business case then was converting from, sending natural gas into a generator to putting it back into the grid, essentially, or the pipeline that would go to the grid at that point. And you were touching on the role of automation in this project, because I want to get behind the scenes a little bit, right? Because we know what the business driver was for this project. The roles I heard automation played in this was there was remote monitoring. That was an element of it. What other ways did automation play into this project?
You have to report the amount of gas that you produce, for example, what you're injecting or what you're loading onto a truck, and the accuracy of that data needs to be pretty sharp. So looking at the control system, we have all the metrics that we need. It's really at that point, once that control system is in place, it's really a matter of collecting the data and historizing it, keeping those records, and then using those records to create the reports that we do to send to, the entities that decide how much we get paid from a renewable natural gas injection standpoint. So I would say it allows us to support the site, ensure it's operational. Automation, allows us to ensure it's operational. It allows us to report accurately on its performance and how much, money we get back, basically.
Yeah, the integrity of the business transaction.
Right. Yep. So automation is a very important play at that particular facility for sure. And it's a Rockwell-based control system. It's got a historian, so it's, like you said, remote monitoring, remote dashboarding, things like that. So
yeah. Well, as you and I both know, even when you spend your career at Rockwell Automation, you go somewhere else. You don't fall too far from the tree in that regard. So I would expect it to have played out that way.
It's hard to, at least if you're residing in the U.S., right? So
yeah. Well, I think what people realize, I think most of the audience listening, they see how vast the Rockwell ecosystem is. It's, in fact, most people are probably working with systems integrators, solution companies like yourself or their local distributor. So, it's no secret the breadth that we'll call it an empire that empire covers. I'm curious, where are you seeing the most growth in your business right now? Whether it's, maybe it's the prefab buildings, whether it's energy projects. I don't want to put too many words in your mouth. Where are you seeing the growth and the trends in the industry right now going?
I mean, I think a lot of the growth that the company is seeing at the moment is tied to that data center market growth. If you asked me that question 3 years ago, the answer might have been different, but I think even at that time, we were already kind of starting to ride that wave, so to speak. We've seen recent growth, and maybe things change now moving forward, and I don't want this to become a political discussion by any means, but
sure.
EV infrastructure, for example, the company kind of stood up a team dedicated to and focused on building out EV infrastructure. So we've tailored some of our services. We've operationalized some of our production capacity to make the right solutions for building out that infrastructure.
When you say infrastructure, are you talking like charging stations and things like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And then taking it one step further. So, I mean, someone can go buy an off-the-shelf EV charger and put it in their garage or put it at a Starbucks or whatever. We like to take it one step further and really look at the system as a whole and say, all right, what additional infrastructure is needed to, support this thing long term? And one charger is different than putting in 10 chargers at a site. The electrical load is pretty significant, as you can imagine, for some of these DC fast chargers. And then for locations where it makes sense, how do we leverage renewable energies? So can we set up a small solar array, put one of our microgrid inverters on site, and allow that to feed the EV chargers? So we've done some examples of that. So again, I would say that was a growth engine for us, or kind of still is, but it could change. But the hyperscale data, or even just I'll call it data center space in general, that's been a really rapid growth space for us. So,
well, if I'm hearing things right, you've positioned yourself to be right on top of some of the macro trends taking place in the world in general, right? There's going to be more data centers with artificial intelligence, with all these new fabs that are being built. There's a need for new data centers. There's a big push for sustainable solutions, and then EV infrastructure, right? Electric cars clearly aren't going anywhere. So I find it really interesting that you've been able to double down on all these different markets, which I guess leads me to one final question kind of around this topic. What would you say the common thread across the different projects you take on is? Because, when I look at electrical contracting, data centers, EV infrastructure, it doesn't always seem like, oh yeah, clearly one company would be doing all those. So what would you describe as the common thread?
It's probably the subatomic particle called the electron.
Okay. Good. Great answer, actually.
Yeah. And you use the word "you" referring to me, but I think you meant the company.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go back to, like I said, the first 30 years, highly focused on electrical contracting. Over the last 2 decades, there was some really conscious decisions that the leadership team of this company made, looking at these, emerging markets and saying, this looks interesting. We think there's going to be something happening here. We're going to invest now. We're going to build a team around it. We're going to structure our organization appropriately, whatever. So credit goes to them for sure.
Yeah.
And I would say if they look back 20 years and they say, did we make the right decision? I think they would agree, yes. So
I have to ask you about one other fun project I came across, crypto mining. How do you end up in the crypto mining world?
Well, skidded solutions, containerized solutions. In some cases, that was a good fit. And it depends on the company that's, doing their crypto mining and how they want that facility to look and how they want to structure those miners, those computers. And it's hard to say that we're really in it. But I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I can tie that back a little bit to some of the renewable energy stuff and energy resilience. So very similar to the Middleton biodigester site that we were talking about, where we can operate that place off grid, right? We've built another facility kind of on the eastern side of the state of Wisconsin, and it's more of an office facility, and we call it our Vision Center. So it's intended to showcase the technologies that we support and we deliver to our customers and clients. So it's got showcases for automation solutions, renewable energies, digital power, the construction services that we can provide, the containerized or modularized solutions that we can build and deliver. We designed and constructed that facility with the intent of showcasing those things. So it's got a large solar field. We've got a big inverter. We've got some small battery storage. But when we have more power available to us through solar, for example, than what is being demanded by the facility, there's 2 options: store that power, or why don't we run some crypto miners? They consume power. They consume electric power. So why don't we do some crypto mining on the side, if you will? So just a little side project. But yeah, we have done some applications in the crypto space as well. So
I feel like it's very appropriate that there's a side project element to the crypto project that you worked on. That's probably the story for a lot of people that are dabbling in that space right now.
I think it's a good way to highlight the energy resilience piece. So if it's done right, because again, this facility is also completely off grid. There's no utility tied to it.
Wow.
So we are dependent on what we have there to make the power that we need. And what we're finding is we have excess power. That's a good problem to have. When we talk about energy resilience, it would be a bad thing if we didn't have enough power. So in our case, we have more, and we're asking ourselves, what do we do with that extra power? So
this actually feels like a good way to switch to talking about some trends in sustainability, because a couple areas you highlighted during our conversation were around energy independence, being totally off grid, like you were just talking about. Do you see that being something more achievable, that more companies are going to be able to pursue and enact in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, right?
You mean pursue energy resilience or energy independence, or?
I would say let's go both, whichever you feel is the better way to answer
Yeah.
it.
I mean, resilience is one of those things that it really comes down to what is the best and most appropriate design to ensure that downtime due to a loss of utility power, you know,
Yeah.
so there's certainly ways around that or ways to address that. Resilience, I think, is something that every company can achieve. Energy independence might be a little bit more of a large step, especially for large manufacturing,
Okay.
where they might be consuming hundreds of megawatts of power.
Sure.
Having energy independence for that type of load is a pretty tall ask. You almost have to have a power generation source more than just maybe a solar field, right? So,
Yeah.
But there are applications, there are examples of that, and I guess I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on that, but
Sure.
so that's maybe my answer for that. I think resilience is something very achievable, and we love helping customers and clients work on that. Energy independence is that last step of our pathway to smarter energy.
Yeah.
And is achievable, but maybe a little bit case dependent. And so don't want to overpromise anything on a public talk. You know?
Of course. No, I was just kind of curious on some of your perspectives there as we've dabbled in all these areas. What would you say your more general take on what are the trends we're going to see here when it comes to energy and sustainability moving into 2025?
I mean, I think there's going to be a continuation of, companies embracing renewable energies as needed, and maybe not to offset their entire power utilization from the utility, but offset some of it so that, on their sustainability report, it looks better. It appeals to their customers and clients. It resonates with their partners and their supply chain. So I think we'll continue to see the embracement of that. The focus area for me, I would say, is really how do we help those customers on the first two steps of that journey, assessing their current utilization and looking for ways to optimize or conserve energy. And automation has a huge play right there. So a lot of times, I think the big thing for manufacturers today, tomorrow, next year, and well into the future is going to be optimization of their production system. Energy utilization or energy conservation might be a component of that, but leveraging automation to do that, but also reduce scrap or increase yield or improve quality or address the workforce constraints that we know are present in the market. Using automation to do those things, and all of those, in my opinion, are categorized as production optimization. I think that's the thing that manufacturing customers and clients are looking for.
And that makes sense to me. I like that you went from talking about energy, assessing utilization, finding ways to conserve energy, but a lot of this, and I think the manufacturing happy hour listeners are familiar with this, a lot of this ties back to optimization of production as well. If you're reducing scrap, like you gave as an example, that's going to have energy impacts also. I wanted to ask you about automation trends, and you were touching on that quite a bit there. I guess the question that came out of that for me was, what is the biggest aha moment folks you're working with have around automation when they're working on a project with you, whether it's energy related, whether it's electrical contracting? Where are the aha moments that they're able to get more out of the project, more out of the process after it's done that you're witnessing?
For sure, one is, for those situations where we're working with a client that's building a new production facility, the time savings to get from we have an idea that we want to build a new production facility to this plant is up and running, we're producing product, creating revenue, and realizing profits, right? So the time frame to do that, call it speed to market. However you can shorten that by 1 day, 2 days, 2 weeks, a month, whatever. I think that's an aha thing, right? So if we can create solutions, if we can bring ideas to the table that allow that end user manufacturer to do that, that's a game changer. And we're not unique, right? We're not unique in that regard. There's a lot of cool ideas and a lot of really, really, well-versed companies out there, system integrators, contractors, et cetera, that do that. I think there are a few things that differentiate FTI. and maybe one is just the very broad end-to-end range of what we can do and what we can deliver and the value that we bring.
Yeah, no kidding. I've learned a lot about the intersection of electrical contracting, energy, prefabbed buildings, etc., just throughout this conversation. Because admittedly, when I go into a discussion like this, I see some of the business models out there, and they're all very unique, right? And I don't have that immediate aha moment sometimes of, oh, I see how all this ties together. But I think you've done a really great job of like summarizing where all these play together and why this makes so much sense and why it's translating to FTI being very successful in what you're doing right now.
It's honestly, it's one of the reasons that I maybe made the career change that I did.
Sure.
I saw that, I recognized it. It looked extremely interesting, and I was like, that's easy to talk to people about. That's a differentiator. That's easy to talk about. We don't just sell a product. We don't just provide a service. We can do everything from the front end, very high concept development, to engineering consultation, to full design services, to manufacture this thing in-house, whatever it is, and bring it to the site, to the whole automation package around it, and then future life cycle support. It's like, that's what we call end-to-end, and I think that's a pretty key differentiator. Now, there are others out there, again, that do that.
Sure.
We know that, but it's less of a, I think it's less common than, so.
Well, I would say it's certainly less common. I mean, out of the 200-something episodes we've done, you're the first person I've talked to that is part of a business that has this breadth of experience. I have to ask, this is a personal career question. What do you feel gave you the sensibility to step back and say, hey, what FTI is doing is very unique. I'm probably not going to come across an opportunity like this every day. If you can share, some of your discernment process there. That's a tough question over a beer. I know.
I didn't overthink it. I just, I was just like, yeah, let's do it. So.
All right. I like that. No,
there might be more to that answer, Chris, but I'm not thinking of it at the moment. So.
Sure. No, that's fair. Well, I'm going to make it, help us end on a bit of an open-ended way. Is there anything you wish I would have asked that I haven't touched on yet? We've covered a lot of ground today, from your career to the breadth that FTI offers. What else might be on your mind, or is there a call to action that you have for the audience?
I mean, we talked a lot about, the modular and what we call industrialized construction approach that we take. We talked a lot about the energy piece of our business. We didn't really actually talk that much about automation. And I kind of thought you were going to ask me something about AI, because it's hard to have a conversation nowadays without talking about AI.
We did an AI drinking game during one of our live podcasts at one point, which, by the way, the subject of the podcast had nothing to do with artificial intelligence. But I'm like, well, we're doing a live show. It would be fun anyway. And sure enough, there were opportunities where the audience and all the panelists had to take an extra sip of their beer during the discussion. So, well, give us your take on AI, right? I'm trying to actually do a better job to remember to ask people on their takes on where they see it playing in and what you're doing to prepare for it.
It's awesome and it's scary at the same time. I think there's so much to be had, but also along with that, there needs to be a certain level of responsibility and ownership that every single one of us take on. Because, as you probably know, if you ask, ChatGPT to perform something and develop an image or write you this, that, or whatever, the amount of electric power that it takes to do that is 20, 30-fold, whatever it might be, for a regular Google search.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing things, advertisements for new AI applications where you can just walk around with a headset on and talk to this AI and have full conversations for hours on end.
Yeah.
Where does the personal responsibility come in? Because these things are consuming electric power to give you that nice, cool feature, whatever it is you want.
Yeah, I like that you're bringing this up.
And maybe that person doesn't realize that, but it might be the same person that says we need to stop burning coal and go with all renewable energies. Well, they're kind of on both sides of the argument then, right? So
yeah.
I think that would be my message on AI. I think there's an awesome play for AI and what it can do, and especially within industrial automation. I think the limits are not boundless, but there's a lot that can be done with AI with automation solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But the consumer end of AI, I think we need to really think about that hard and what we're doing, because we get to see, you know, if we're providing these electric power distribution systems into these large data centers, we get to see firsthand how much power it takes to make this stuff happen.
Right.
So
Right.
I'd say think about that, you know.
I like that call to action. That is I think one that we all need to think of, right, in terms of what is our, like you were saying, personal responsibility, just being aware of what it takes for artificial intelligence to exist and execute. I think that is a nice way to wrap things up here. So, well, Kevin, I've enjoyed the conversation from start to finish today. I learned a lot during this discussion. These are my favorite ones where I come in not necessarily knowing what to expect and then walking away with a more clear understanding of where a business like yours really fits in the manufacturing industrial automation world. So, Kevin, thanks so much for jumping on Manufacturing Happy Hour.
This was a lot of fun, Chris. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yep, cheers.